So Google just published a brand new guide telling sellers exactly how to rank inside of their AI overviews. And I'm about to give you advice that sounds completely crazy. In order to rank an AI search, you must do the complete opposite of almost everything in the guide. I've been doing SEO AEO for 19 years, and I can tell you the stuff Google tells you to do is vague, useless filler. The real gold is buried in the things they warn you never to do. And one of them happens to be the single highest converting traffic source on the internet right now. I'll show you which one and why Google doesn't want you figuring this out. So here's what happened. On May 15th, Google published a brand new official document called Optimizing Your Website for Generative AI Features in Google Search. It's the first time they've ever put it in writing. How to actually show up inside of AI overviews and AI mode, which are the AI answers now sitting right at the top of the results page. And it opens exactly the way every Google guide has opened since the dawn of time. Just write helpful, people-first content for humans instead of algorithms, and good things will happen to you. Now that sounds perfectly reasonable until you realize what they're actually implying, which is that Google's system can read your page, understand it the way a human would, and then decide on their own whether it's genuinely helpful. And that is just not how any of this works. A machine cannot taste your content and know it's good. It reads signals, patterns, links, and behavior, and nothing more. And here's the thing I've learned in all my years doing this. Google's published guidelines and the way Google actually works have always been two completely different things, and the proof is everywhere once you know where to look. For years, their rules flatly warned against building links to your own site. Artificial links, link schemes, paid links, all of it supposedly a fast track to a penalty. Meanwhile, friends of mine who do SEO for a living, guys like Jeff Oxford over at 180marketing.com, were quietly building backlinks for their clients the entire time, and it was one of the single most powerful things you could possibly do to rank back in the day. Google said one thing in public while the exact opposite was working in private, and that pattern has never once changed. And I cared about this new guide for a very real reason. Over the last year, I've observed some interesting behavior in my own store over at bumblebeelinens.com. Customers started showing up already knowing my handkerchiefs and linens by name and coming directly to my website. Brand searches have shot up dramatically. And it turns out that they were finding me inside of AI's answers and Googling my brand Bumblebee Linens. AI overviews rarely led to any clicks outside of my homepage. And the data says this is happening to everyone. When an AI summary shows up in the results, people click on a regular link only 8% of the time, compared to 15% when there's no summary at all. And only 1% ever click a source link inside of the summary itself. Meanwhile, the AI traffic that does come through is exploding. Traffic to US retail sites from generative AI sources jumped 1,200% in a single year. So the game is changing fast, the clicks are drying up, and sellers are desperate for a real answer. Now, Google handed us a guide that pretends to be that answer, and the genuinely valuable part of it is the list of things they're practically begging you not to do. So let's go through them right now. The first thing Google tells you not to do is the most revealing thing in the entire document. They say you shouldn't create separate versions of your content for every different way people might search, and in plain English, don't take the same basic guide and rework it to target a different customer or a different use case. And why not? Well, according to Google, doing this to influence rankings violates their scaled content abuse spam policy, and it can get you penalized. So let me ask you the obvious question. If this tactic doesn't actually work, well, why on earth would Google need a penalty for it? You don't build a punishment for something that does nothing. The only reason to threaten people who do this is that it works incredibly well, and they'd rather you stop doing it. Now, I want to be careful here because there's a wrong way to listen to this. I am not telling you to spin up hundreds of near identical articles, and I'm not telling you to make 10 pages targeting the same keyword with the same information rephrased. That actually is spam. It will get you buried. But here's the version that works. In my own store, the wedding market, the corporate gifting market, and the memorial and funeral market all buy handkerchiefs for completely different reasons. So instead of one generic page, I write a genuinely distinct guide for each one of those buyers, each one packed with information that only applies to that specific customer type. It's the same product category, but 12 real audiences getting 12 articles that each say something genuinely unique. Now that is not manipulation. That is just serving different people properly, and it's one of the most effective things you can do right now. AI overviews already show up on roughly 16% of all searches and have hit nearly 25% during peak periods, so the surface area for getting your store cited is massive and growing. Now Google calling this an abuse policy is the tell. The move they're warning you off of is the move that you should be making as long as every version earns its place. And the next thing on this list is even more interesting because it touches something every brand obsesses over. So the second thing Google warns you against is seeking out inauthentic mentions of your brand across the web. So basically, don't go planting recommendations and shoutouts for your store on 1,000 random pages to look more popular than you are. And the reason they give is very interesting. Google says don't bother because their systems are already excellent at spotting spam, so they'll just ignore all those low quality mentions you work so hard to get. And here's where I have to call it like I see it. That is pure BS. Google does ignore plenty of obvious spam, so spraying your brand name across garbage sites really is a waste of time. But the careful, well-placed version of this is working incredibly well right now, and there's no clearer example than Reddit. Reddit is the single most cited source feeding AI answers today, making up roughly 40% of all citations across the major AI engines and about 21% of the citations inside of Google's own AI overviews. Now sit with that for a second. The number one source Google's AI pulls from is Reddit, and Reddit is being gamed harder than almost anything else online right now. I have friends who do this for a living, quietly inserting brand mentions into exactly the right threads, and it absolutely works. I recently had Danny Kirk, the founder of an agency called RedditReach that does this for hundreds of brands on my podcast, and he confirmed what I already suspected. A huge amount of what you read on Reddit today was placed there on purpose, and it's flowing straight into the AI answers your customers see. So Google tells you they catch and ignore those mentions, while their own AI is actively quoting gamed Reddit threads back to shoppers. So the takeaway here is simple. Stop wasting effort on the pages Google ignores and pour everything into earning genuine, useful mentions on the exact sources Google already trusts and already cites. And this is worth real money. Shoppers who arrive from AI sources like ChatGPT are converting 31% higher than visitors from non-branded organic search. So getting your brand cited in the right place isn't a soft branding play. It is some of the highest intent traffic on the internet right now. But before you go optimize anything, you actually have to hear the part of this guide that actually saves you weeks of wasted work. By the way, if you're interested in learning how to start your own profitable online store, make sure you sign up for my free 6-day e-commerce mini course. It's 100% free, and I guarantee you'll learn a ton. So this is actually the one part of the guide where Google did everyone a genuine favor, and I'll give them full credit for it. There's been a flood of so-called experts over the last year selling complicated tricks for ranking in AI, and Google just quietly torched a bunch of them. So you do not need an LLMs.txt file, that special little text file people swear you have to add so that AI can read your site. Because Google flatly says it does nothing for them. You can also skip publishing a separate markdown version of all your pages too. There's no reason to chop your content into tiny chunks so the AI can supposedly digest it better, since their systems already pull the right passage straight out of the normal page. And no special schema markup or structured data is required to show up in their AI features at all. And here's a quiet admission buried in all of this. Google now says AI-generated content is perfectly fine as long as it's helpful, which is a massive reversal from the panic they spent 2 years creating. So why the sudden change of heart? Because they genuinely cannot tell the difference reliably anymore. And when you can't detect the very thing you outlaw, the only move left is to pretend you are always okay with it. Now for a store owner, this is real relief. If you've been losing sleep, thinking you have to re-engineer your entire site with machine-readable files just to survive, you can let all that go now. None of it is the unlock people sold it as. And once you clear away all that noise, you're left with a much bigger and far more uncomfortable question, which is the real reason this guide exists at all. So let me be brutally honest about what's really going on here. Google did not write a vague guide by accident. They wrote a vague guide on purpose. Think about Google's actual position for a second here. Every click their AI answer keeps is a click that doesn't leave their page to go to your store. Those numbers from earlier aren't a bug to them. they're actually the entire business model. So Google has almost zero incentive to ever tell you, in plain and specific terms, how to pull traffic back out of their AI and onto your site. And here's what they will never admit. Google cannot reliably tell what content is written by AI and what isn't. They spent 2 solid years insisting they could spot it and reward real human expertise, and their systems just can't do it at the level they pretend to. So that when they finally went to clean up the results, they couldn't surgically remove the bad actors because they couldn't actually identify them. So they did the only thing a blunt instrument can do. They leaned on the one signal they completely trust, whether you're already an established, known good domain, and then destroyed everyone else. And there's a perfect, painful example of exactly this. A site called House Fresh ran real, hands-on air purifier reviews, the exact type of first-hand expertise that Google's EAT guidance claims to reward the most. But after Google's helpful content update in September of 2023, House Fresh lost roughly 95% of their Google traffic, collapsing from around 4,000 daily visitors down to only around 200. And then they got hammered again in the March 2024 core update. Meanwhile, big sites running affiliate roundups written by people who never touched a single one of those products stayed planted right at the top purely because they were already trusted domains. House Fresh did everything the guidelines told them to do, and the guidelines did not save them. And that is the entire game in one story. And here's the part that really tells you what to do next. If you want a guide that genuinely explains how to get cited in AI, go read Microsoft's instead. Back in October, Microsoft published their own guide, and it does the exact opposite of Google's, handing you real, concrete, tactical instructions. Microsoft tells you to add structured schema markup to your pages. They tell you to break your content into clean, modular question and answer blocks the AI can lift straight out. And they flat out tell you to do several of the very things Google either waved off or warned you against. One of these companies is teaching, and the other one is trying to manage you. So here's how I would actually use everything that came out this month. Treat Google's guide as a confession, and read every warning in it as a hint about what's quietly working. Then go to Microsoft's guide for the step-by-step on how to actually pull it off. Build genuinely distinct content for each of your real customer segments, earn mentions only on the pages Google already trusts, and stop wasting a single minute on LLMs files and chunking tricks that do absolutely nothing. That is the entire playbook, reading between the lines of a document that was written to make sure you never found it. And if you're just getting started, make sure you watch this video right here.